Okay, everybody, thank you so very much for being here with us today for this situational briefing about Israel's aid mission to Turkey and possibly to Syria following the devastating earthquakes that have rocked areas of both of those countries. On behalf of myself, my colleagues at the Miryam Institute, we thank you for granting your time and your attention to the subject at hand today. I'm Benjamin Anthony, your host for this conversation, and I have the high privilege of being joined by Brigadier General Dr. Professor Tarif Bader. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us here today, Dr. Bader. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, first of all. And
my pleasure, sir.
I want everybody to know that you served as the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces, having held that position from 2017 to 2020. We requested a situational briefing from you today, specifically because you are someone who took on a pivotal leadership role in Israel's medical aid responses to two earthquakes in particular, the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 and the earthquake in Nepal in 2015. And as a result of that experience, we've asked you to lend us your insights on the earthquake that rocked, as I mentioned at the top of the program, Turkey on Monday and also northwest Syria, to which Israel has again responded. That earthquake has killed close to 12,000 individuals in Turkey and Syria, with that number still unfortunately rising. And as though that situation isn't complicated enough, in Syria, already devastated by more than 11 years of civil war, state media has said that at least 403 people were killed and more than 1,000 injured, mostly in the Aleppo and Latakia provinces. And in the rebel-held region of northwest Syria, rescuers have said that some 380 people had died. So it's an even more complex situation. Dr. Bader, before we get to those headlines, and I know that you are the individual to tackle the complexity at play here, can you just tell us something about your own, in very brief form, your own personal upbringing and what it was that steered you toward a career in medicine?
Actually, I start, Benjamin, thank you very much for the invitation. And it's a great honor for me to participate with you a little bit of my personal experience. I studied medicine in Ben-Gurion University in Beersheba in the late 80s of the last century. And actually, I studied before I joined the military. And you probably know that all the Druze in Israel are obligated to go to the military. So I decided to study medicine before joining the military. And that's the reason, actually, that when I was graduated from the medical university, I joined the IDF Medical Corps and actually served there as a physician. And in the beginning of the 90s, when I started as a young physician, it could be 4 or 5 years of military services, and that's it. But then by the time I decided to stay more and more in the military, and as you know, I served almost 30 years in the IDF Medical Corps until I reached the highest position of the Surgeon General. And this actually was the last position that I served in the military.
Well, one quick question about that, Dr. Bader. There are many members of the Druze community who fill many key roles within the Israel Defense Forces. Are you the first member of the Druze community to be the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces? That's
right, Benjamin. I remember when we talked when I was the Deputy Surgeon General, and I told you that I'm hoping to be the next Surgeon General, and actually to be the first from the Druze community. And let's say that I became the Surgeon General by the time that 2017, and that's right, that actually I was the first Surgeon General from the Druze community to hold this position.
Quite incredible. So, and tell us just very briefly what it is that you're doing today. You're the CEO of two hospitals, both in Rehovot and Gadara, respectively. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we'll come to the subject at hand.
Yeah, that's right. When I retired from the military, there was an open position of managing one of the these two hospitals, which actually belongs to the Clalit HMO, which is the biggest HMO in Israel. And actually, I was chosen from 9 candidates to hold this position. The Kaplan Medical Center is a general hospital which is located in Rehovot, and actually I'm managing this hospital and the other rehabilitation geriatric hospital, which is nearby, about 15 minutes from here, which called the Herzfeld in Gedera. And actually, it's a dual management of these two hospitals. One is the normal one, the general one, and the other is the geriatric one.
Mm-hmm. So turning now to the events that we've convened to discuss, Dr. Bader, we are now seeing Israel providing humanitarian search and rescue and medical aid to Turkey and ostensibly or reportedly to Syria as well. Can you provide us with some context here? Give us a brief history of Israel's commitment to providing medical assistance beyond its own borders, if you would.
Actually, I'm not surprised at all that the State of Israel is sending again a delegation for this humanitarian delegation after the earthquake. The history of these humanitarian missions go far away to 1953, when was the first delegation of the State of Israel, and you have to keep in mind that the State of Israel was established in 1948. That means at the age of 5 years, the State of Israel sent the first humanitarian mission, even though it was a very small and a concentrated delegation to one of the Greece islands. But since then, more than 15 delegations were sent by the State of Israel all around the world. From you mentioned Haiti and Japan and Thailand and Nepal. So all over the world, whenever there's a big disaster, especially we are talking about earthquakes, but not only earthquakes. So the State of Israel is committed, according to a very strategic decision that have been taken here, that whenever there is a need for us, we are offering ourselves to help others.
And you have actually been on the forefront of implementing the Israeli doctrine, the Israeli strategy of extending a helping hand to all, both as the Deputy Surgeon General and then as the Surgeon General of the Israel Defense Forces, and in other capacities earlier on in your career. Could you briefly tell us about your deployments to Haiti in 2010 in the wake of a 7.0 magnitude earthquake there, and then Nepal in 2015 in the wake of a 7.8 magnitude earthquake there, which I believe is the same level of magnitude, the same magnitude that we've just seen in Turkey. Tell us about your deployments to those two places.
First of all, we are talking about two earthquakes that were in a very far away places from Israel. We are talking about places in the other hemisphere of the world. More than 13 hours of direct flights from Israel to these places. And as I said, since there is a strategic decision of the State of Israel, I remember myself that on January 2010, when we heard about the earthquake in Nepal, we can say that within minutes or even hours, we started to begin, let's say, prepare for this delegation. I said we are talking about a strategic decision. Besides, we are talking about a very unique thing that we are teaching our medical personnel. In the medical oath, it's written to extend the helping hand for everybody. So actually, it's not only the strategic decision of the State of Israel, but it's also the way we are teaching our personnel to act in these issues. And I remember that after the earthquake in 2010, we have a military unit called the Military Field Hospital, which is combined of reserved personnel. That means there are people who are working in hospitals or clinics, and actually during the wartime or emergency wartime, they are going back to the military, and actually they are recruiting to the military in order to go to these missions. So beside this unit, we are gathering personnel from other other hospitals in order to build the delegation. And of course, this delegation is according to the purpose of what is needed. And when we are talking about, for example, the earthquake in Nepal, we knew that most of the infrastructures of Haiti, we knew that most of the infrastructure of Haiti were destroyed. Mm-hmm. And actually, we wanted to be there as soon as possible from one hand, and to the other hand, to be totally independent in order to be able to build our field hospital whenever there is a need for us. And this is what happened. We were there within 89 hours, and actually we were the first field hospital in Port-au-Prince. And it's amazing. You have to understand that it's gathering the people, arranging this delegation, having this direct flight of 15 hours from Tel Aviv to Port-au-Prince, and building the new hospital with. It's not building. It's the tents that you might remember with the photos there. And actually, this is what happened during these 89 hours. And we were able to open the hospital and to be the first hospital in Port-au-Prince.
It's quite incredible. So how will you obviously have tremendous experience in this area, and I understand that the delegations to Turkey are taking your counsel and consulting with you throughout. I understand that you're playing an advisory role. How will the IDF's experience dealing with the aftermath of earthquakes in Haiti and Nepal assist Israel's efforts to grapple with the aftermath of these earthquakes in Turkey and Syria? For example, what might some of the commonalities be, and what might some of the distinctions be between operating in Haiti and Nepal and now operating in Turkey? As an example, Dr. Bader, you made mention of the fact that the aid mission to Haiti saw the dispatch of Israelis to another hemisphere. Here, they're dispatching very close to home indeed. Talk to us about how the experience informs what we're doing now today.
First of all, we are learning from each delegation that we have. Besides, we are learning from all the drills that we are doing for these military units. And that's the reason that by the time we gathered a lot of experience, we as a state of Israel, as the IDF, gathered a lot of experience, both by the delegations and from the drills that we are doing, either in the medical corps or in the home front command. And that's the reason that I can tell you that from time to time, we are sending a better delegation and we are doing a better work for the affected country. And actually, we are, let's say, that kind of lucky that in this time, we are dispatching this delegation to a country which is a little bit near Israel. It's not 15 hours of flight, but it's rather than 3 or 4 hours of direct flight. And since there is a great manner that times is very important here, so that's the reason that this delegation might be operating the hospital even less than 89 hours after the earthquake. And actually, this is what we are learning from time to time, how to arrange the delegation, how to gather all these people, either from the military unit or from the people who are serving in the military, or from the retired and reserved people, to gather all of them together, to understand what are the needs in the affected country. For example, if we are talking about the differences between these delegations, we are talking about a delegation during the winter. And yes, it's very important that part of the equipment that we are taking are equipment to take care of those who are affected not only by the earthquake and the injuries, but also by the weather. So these are the fine tuning of this delegation that we have to take in account before we are going to the affected country.
And the weather, I understand, Dr. Bader, is playing a very real role here. People trapped underneath the rubble and potentially facing the prospect of freezing to death. Is that something that the medical corps dispatch is ready to take care of if they're able to?
Actually, when I see the news and hear about the people there, I remember in February 2013, when the first Syrian came to the border. And you have to, I'm sure that you remember and you know that the weather in the Golan Heights, it's also very cold. And actually, we found ourselves not only treating the injuries that they were suffered from, but also treating the hypothermia they were suffered from. So we are in the military corps. We are familiar to take care also for hypothermic injuries. And this is one of the things that this delegation has to take care in during this mission.
So, Dr. Bader, as someone who's commanded these missions in the past, I want to get your insight on this. The IDF sent a delegation of 150 search, rescue, and medical experts to the earthquake in Turkey. They were on the ground there by February 7th, but prior to that, I'm just checking the date, so they were on the ground there by yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, prior to that, there was an initial smaller team that had flown in the day before. Tell us what the purpose is of that smaller team. Is it assessing the utility of a delegation, a broader delegation? Is it assessing security, the conditions? What's going on there?
Actually, this assessment team, which actually I was a member of one of the assessment teams in 2003 to Thailand after the tsunami there. And actually, one of the missions, first of all, they have to be a very quick team. That means they have to be ready within a couple of hours to go to the affected country. And of course, since they are going not as a delegation, but sometimes in a civilian flight, so actually they are taking only a small amount of equipment, and that's it. And the purpose of this assessment team is to be what we call boots on the ground as soon as possible in order to understand what is happening in the affected country. Mm-hmm. Even though in these days we can learn a lot from the media, and we can learn either from the, let's say in Turkey, for example, they are talking with a lot of tourists who are visiting Turkey, and we can learn a lot from them. But it's not the same when, let's say, a professional eyes are going to the affected country in order to understand what are the real needs of this country, where is the best place to have this field hospital, and what are the other activities from this field that are working in the affected country. So this is a huge advantage. That is when the delegation, with the big delegation, lands in the affected country, they will find our teams, our people there, and actually this team will have the accurate information that can give us an advantage of where to have this field hospital and what are the needs. Mm. In some cases, we are waiting for the final review of this assessment team in order to decide whether to go to this country or not. And actually, this is what happened in 2003. After my assessment team, we found that there was no need for a big delegation, and that's the reason that it didn't go like this. But this is very important to have this small delegation as assessment team as soon as possible in the affected country.
Understood. Now, once it's been determined that a larger team should be sent, can you tell us where these 150 rescue workers, including the medical workers, are drawn from? Now, you did allude to this earlier on in one of your earlier answers. Yeah. But one question that springs to mind is I understand that these doctors are drawn from the reserve units of the medical corps of the Israel Defense Forces and from elsewhere. But I'd like to know two things. Firstly, how do they maintain such an incredible state of readiness to be able to respond so quickly? That's the first point. The second point is a little bit more complicated. When the typical reservist is drafted by way of an emergency mobilization in Israel to be a soldier, that person is not being a soldier in civilian life, right, Doctor? Yeah. But in the case of the medical corps, you're drawing doctors who are practicing medicine somewhere in Israel with all of the challenges, shortness of staff, shortness of doctors and nurses and first aid, first line workers. and they're being taken from these areas and they are going on a delegation overseas. How is that all worked out?
It's a big issue because first of all, you have to distinguish between the rescue and research and search delegation, which belongs to the home front commands, and it always goes together with the medical delegation. So actually, we are talking about two separate parts of the delegation. One is dealing with rescue and search, and the other one is dealing with field hospital. And sometimes there is a small delay between these two delegations. But in other places, like in Haiti and Nepal, we went together as a big delegation, which is dealing with these two things. You describe it very well, that actually the people who are going to these delegations, to these missions, most of them are reserve people. That means I can find myself as a CEO of the General Hospital here in Kaplan, dealing with a surgeon or a pediatric or whatever who wants, and they want them to join this mission. And actually, he will join the mission as a reserved physician or reserve officer and going there. And that's right that in a shortage of resources, sometimes we have to decide. For example, if the Surgeon General will ask me now to send 4 pediatric physicians to this delegation, I might be telling him that I can send only 2 because I have to continue managing the hospital. So I have to take care also for my let's say national responsibility,
the domestic responsibility.
Absolutely. And even we are talking about the people who are serving in the military. I cannot leave all the units in the military without physicians, paramedics, and medics and sending all of them to this delegation. So I have to make the balance between continue working, continue giving the treatment that I have to give for our people, either the military ones or the civilian ones, beside going to these delegations and giving treatment for the affected country.
And it seems to me now, turning to the site to where the delegations are sent, it seems that there are continuing aftershocks of various levels of severity that are taking place after the initial earthquake. And in the first 11 hours, for example, the region had felt 13 significant aftershocks with a magnitude of at least 5, and further aftershocks are expected in the coming days, weeks, and possibly even months. I want to ask you, how is the safety of our delegation assured, given the strength of these aftershocks?
Yeah, first of all, we are telling all the time that safety first. Mm-hmm. And if I go back to the 1930, or 1912, when we talked about Japan, for example, that was the reason that we postponed the delegation, the Israel delegation, for almost 3 days in order to be sure that the place in Japan after the tsunami there was safe for our people. And this is what we are doing. So actually, we are having again this balance between being as soon as possible there and taking care of our personnel. So we are talking about safety first. And regarding the other earthquakes, which comes later,
the aftershocks,
we have the advantage in parentheses, that actually our field hospital is in tents. Mm-hmm. And actually, when we are talking about tents, it's like a safe place to be. It's not like a building that there are a danger of collapsing. Right. So we are talking to our people that we have to be in open places, and we have to take care of ourselves, and we have to take in account that when we are going to buildings or nearby buildings, we have to be sure that they are safe. So these are part of the arrangement that we are taking into account, but it's again being a physician or being an officer, it's not without hazards. It's not without danger. So it's part of the things that we are talking about.
Now, the head of the IDF mission to Turkey, an individual named Colonel Golan Vach, who is not from the medical corps, but rather from the Home Front Command, and you mentioned earlier that these two tend to go hand in hand to some degree, he's leading a delegation made up of 1/3 headquarters and intelligence, and 2/3 rescue, medical, and engineering capabilities. Can you explain to us how the treatment of the injured is prioritized by the medical teams that the IDF dispatches? Is there a triage system? For example, would the treatment of a pregnant woman supersede the treatment of a male with severe injuries? How do you work that? Because as wonderful as I'm sure the field hospital is, it obviously has very limited resources, limited medical personnel. What's your order of prioritization?
Again, when we are talking about the rescue and search team, in this delegation for the Home Front Command, there is a small proportion of medical teams, other medics or paramedics or physicians who are actually, let's say that they know how to treat, or they give the first, that they are the first responders, or give the first treatment, the initial treatment for the people under the rebels, or the people who are rescued and saved from these places. And actually, they are relying on the local hospitals to give the further treatment.
I see.
And when our field hospital is established there, in the most cases, they are taking the victims from the affected area when they are rescued, and actually they are moving them, they're transferring them to our field hospital. So after both parts of this delegation are established in the affected country, they can work with collaboration and actually find the victims under the rebels, for example, give them the initial treatment, and after that transferring them to the field hospital. But in the time when the field hospital is not established yet, actually they are transferring to the local hospitals.
But and that's very informative. And I understand that the field hospital that's been sent over is actually beginning to take patients or to operate this evening. That's my understanding of it. Please correct me if I'm mistaken. I seem to recall that on your previous delegations, aid missions to Nepal, to Haiti, one of the key facilities that they had to have in these field hospitals was a neonatal facility because of the birth of children, even in these extremely difficult and strenuous circumstances. Will those be part of the facilities provided here? And what might other facilities be provided as priorities within the field hospital once it's up and running?
Let's say that I assume, I don't know the exact numbers of this delegation right now, but I assume that the majority of the delegation is concentrated in treating orthopedic or surgical problems. Okay. Because these are the majority of the problems that we are dealing with. Let's say in general, we are not taking, for example, a neurosurgeon to these delegations, because neurosurgeries have to be done in established hospitals, and it's not fair to have this surgeries in a field hospital. But all other types of surgeries, including orthopedic surgeries, including the abdominal and the probably thoracic problems, they can be treated by the team. So in general, we are talking about the surgical part of the delegation and the other part of the delegation. That means the pediatric and the internal medicine, which sometimes it's part of the needs in this affected country. And in all cases, we are talking about an intensive care unit, which is very important, not only for the severely ill or injured people, but it's also very important for those who are having the surgery, who are operating in the field hospital. So the post-op period is very important, and that's the reason that they have to have this intensive care unit. Regarding the neonatal, it depends on the affected country and what is the information that we have and what are the needs in this country. In the case of Nepal, we knew in advance that there might be a problem, part of it because of the Israeli people who went to Nepal for having this birth there. And actually, we were prepared to join to our delegation a small portion, probably it's a higher portion than other delegations of neonatal intensive care unit.
Thank you. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said earlier, yesterday actually, he said that Israel also plans to send tents, medication and blankets to Syria. Now, the Syrians, Dr. Bader, have denied that Israeli aid is incoming, and the IDF has denied, in a carefully worded statement, that the Israeli military will be involved in the rescue efforts underway in Syria. Emphasis on the denial that the Israeli military will be involved. That means that other facilities might be sent. But there is a very clear history of the Israel Defense Forces treating injured Syrians. Who knows that better than you? Because you are the individual who founded Israel's famed field hospital in northern Israel for the very purpose of treating severely wounded and injured Syrians who were seeking urgent medical care as a result of wounds sustained during the ongoing Syrian civil war. My question for you, Dr. Bader, is this. Is it possible that Israel is indeed sending a delegation to Syria, but that delegation might be a clandestine or hidden delegation? And I ask that because I remember very clearly that one of your challenges when you had treated the Syrians who fled the civil war was to repatriate them safely, because if it had been discovered that they'd had treatment inside Syria, they might be executed inside Israel, forgive me, if it was discovered that they'd been treated inside Israel, they might be executed upon their return to Syria. Do you think that it's possible there is an Israeli delegation helping in Syria right now?
Let's say that I hope that the Syrian part will accept the Israeli, let's say, the Israeli side and accept the delegation. I can tell you for sure that I do not know whether there is right now a delegation who is preparing to go to Syria. Regarding treating the Syrians, and actually you know that we treated almost 6,000 Syrian people during the civil war there. It's a totally different issue because actually we treated all of them inside Israel. That means that we didn't pass the border and we didn't go to Syria in order to treat them there and save their lives there because of the unique position that we have with the Syrian, because the hostile border and other things. And even at that time, if the injured Syrians have decided not to pass the border and come to Israel, we will not be able to treat them. And I think in this issue, I also heard the Prime Minister, probably we will send some kind of humanitarian aid to Syria, not including personnel, probably, because we are talking about two parts of humanitarian aid. The first one is sending equipments, and it could be directly to Syria or through a third party. And the other part is sending the delegation. And you might saw in the media, our delegation in the affected countries are soldiers with the Israeli flags, with the uniform of the military uniform. And I doubt it if the Syrian people would allow themselves to have this kind of Israeli invasion to Syria in order to save their lives. But actually, we are prepared for that. And whenever there is a need for, whenever there is a need for us, we will be there. Again, you have to take into account the safety of our personnel. So I think that if such kind of a delegation will go to Syria, the commander of this delegation will be issued to have to deal with the security of our personnel. And if the security of our personnel is not assured, I assume that such a delegation will not go there.
Now, let me ask you a couple of other questions. We have a couple of questions from the audience as well. I'll come to those in a moment. I want to encourage the audience, if you do want to type a question for Dr. Bader, please do so via the chat facility at the base of your Zoom interface. You can write it in there, and if I have time, I will pose those questions to Dr. Bader. Dr. Bader, I want to ask you a little bit about the home front now in Israel, because it's wonderful that Israel dispatches these delegations to Turkey and Nepal and Haiti and Thailand and essentially anywhere and everywhere that assistance is needed. There's an ongoing, or yes, I think it's true to describe it as an ongoing discourse and now a slightly heightened conversation about Israel's preparedness for an earthquake within our own borders. And there are aftershocks or minor earthquakes that are being felt in Israel as we speak, more or less.
Yeah.
How well drilled and trained is the Israeli Home Front and the Israeli Defense Forces Medical Corps to deal with, God forbid, an earthquake of significant magnitude at home? Is that something that we are well placed to contend with if we happen to be struck by such an outcome?
Let's assume that nobody is well prepared or perfect prepared for an earthquake. And actually, I do not envy any country who is suffering from an earthquake. But I think one of the advantages of Israel is the wonderful relationship between the military and the civilian systems. And you mentioned the Home Front Command. Actually, the Home Front Command is actually the role model of how to deal with earthquakes. And actually, they are teaching the civilian system what they are expecting from them to do in the first couple of minutes or hours after the earthquake. Because one of the things that I noticed when I was in Nepal or in Haiti and other places, that sometimes there is a huge importance of what the simple citizen is doing in the first minutes after the earthquake. And when you are improving the response for these citizens in the first minutes or the first hours after the earthquake, you can also save lives by doing this well. So the advantage of Israel, that if we will be suffering from an earthquake, first of all, most of our hospitals are well protected against earthquakes. So it will not be like Haiti, for example, that also the hospitals were almost totally destroyed. So first of all, the hospitals are it's not totally protected, but most of them or part of them are well protected against earthquakes. So the health system will continue working. Beside that, most of the people in Israel know what to do in the early moments after the earthquake. And that will give us a huge advantage of how to deal with these circumstances. In these circumstances, of course, the third part of our accumulative experience of what we have done in other affected countries, so will help us to deal with ourselves.
Thank you. Another two questions three very short questions, I suppose. The first one that I want to ask you is this. We associate the idea of post-traumatic stress disorder with combat soldiers. I don't really want to run a conversation about that topic in particular on this webinar, but I don't think we necessarily have the same level of association with members of the medical corps. It must be the case that you're confronted with horrific scenes when you go to a disaster area, you having been sent across the world to tend to people with, as you mentioned, terrible orthopedic injuries and beyond. When you treated injured Syrians, you were dealing with individuals who'd lost several limbs rather, and so forth. How well placed are we to deal with those sites within the members of the medical corps once they come home safely from their missions overseas?
First of all, experience. The second thing is the role of the commanders. I remember myself as the commander of the delegation to Nepal, walking through the hospital and talking with the medics, with the paramedic, with the nurses, with all the teams over there, and actually trying to see what are they, how do they feel. Besides, it's very important for us that part of the personnel is the psychiatric team, which is not only to treat the affected victims there, but also to take care of the team. It's a very intensive mission. It's not by going to the hospital, working 8 hours and going back to home. It's not like a duty that you are working around the clock for 24 hours, and after that you are going home for another 24 hours. It's working around the clock. And actually, even when you are going home from the shift from the hospital, actually you are moving to the next net, and you are still in the environment of this field hospital. That means that actually you are in a very intensive a week or 2 weeks, depending on the length of the delegation, and actually you are working around the clock. So that's very important. First of all, before going to this delegation, to be sure that the people chosen to this mission are appropriate to have this area. I can tell you that not all the wonderful, the very experienced surgeons who work perfectly at hospital can work in a field hospital. It's not the same. So you have to choose the people who have the ability not only to have the perfect results in an operation, but also to be sure that they can go and work in this very unique situation. Besides, when we are back from the delegation, it's very important to continue, like it's not a research, but to continue a conversation with all the delegation in order to find whether there are mental problems between these members.
I'm going to thread in a question from one of our audience members. His name's Harold. I'm actually going to massage the question a little bit. But Harold says the following, Dr. Bader. He says, I had the privilege of meeting you when Our Soldiers Speak, which was the precursor to the Miryam Institute, when Our Soldiers Speak brought you to Philadelphia. And Harold goes on to say that the world needs to know that Israel does not discriminate between friend and foe when it comes to humanitarian aid. His question, which I'm now massaging and altering a little bit just to make it a little bit more pointed, is, do these delegations help Israel and Turkish diplomatic relations, given the fact that there is tension between Israel and Turkey, because Turkey is something of a safe haven for Hamas?
I assume yes. I think, like we say in medicine, there is a side effects of treatment, and I think this is a good side effect of what we are doing here. I said more than once that these 6,000 Syrians that were treated by the Israeli field hospital and the civilian hospitals in Israel during the civilian war, I assume that they are better neighbors to Israel after they were treated, and part of them, their lives were saved here. So I assume that this humanitarian mission to Turkey will unfreeze the relation between Turkey and Israel, and will I think it's like a diplomatic efforts that will give by the time I assume that the relation will be better.
Well, I certainly hope so. Dr. Bader, do you, on a human level, you've had such a fulfilling military career within the Israel Defense Forces, and I know that you now are fulfilled as the CEO of 2 hospitals. But when the call comes for an emergency delegation, is there a part of you that wants to offer yourself to go forward and to deploy?
I think it's a great honor to be part of these delegations. And I can tell you that there is a list of high rank commanders. They are not waiting for that, but they are waiting for the opportunity of leading such a unique mission. So I think I have the opportunity to lead more than once these delegations, either in Nepal or in Syria, or bringing back the Israeli victims from Turkey in 2016. Also, when I was a deputy surgeon general, And I think I can advise, I can give advisory to the people there. But I think that we have in the medical corps a very talented officers that more than one of them can lead this unique mission to Turkey.
So this is my second to last question, Dr. Bader. In Syria, residents found a crying newborn still connected by the umbilical cord to her mother, who was dead. The baby was the only member of her family to survive a building collapse in the small town of Jidderis, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Dr. Bader, such a sight as that can, of course, instill an individual with a sense of deep despair. But you have seen similar sights during your own aid missions overseas, I believe. Can hope be drawn from such a tragic occurrence, despite the tragedy that surrounds it? Can we draw hope from the fact that lives are being saved?
I think saving lives, it's a great honor. And it doesn't matter if it's a newborn or a child or an elderly. And I think, you know, the photo, one of the famous photos that I have from Haiti is with a child with an amputated hand, who actually we saved and we treated in our hospital. And also this child was more or less 4 years old. He lost his family. And actually we saved his life, but there was nobody to continue the treatment. And I think I can think about this newborn that let's say that we hope that his or her life will be saved, because we are talking about a killed mother. We are talking about a very unique circumstances when it's very cold there. And I don't know actually how long he was before he was born, while his mother was dead. So actually, it's a very complicated situation, and I hope that this newborn will survive. And I think that the sense of saving lives is a very unique and very important sense. And let's say that I have it more than once during these delegations, and it gives me a sense of a sense of a unique mission, that I was at the right time, the right position, the right place to save the lives.
Now, my last question leads back to an earlier phase of our conversation. You said, Dr. Bader, that there is a strategic decision by which the State of Israel operates to send aid missions throughout the world. Can you just crystallize for everybody who hears this interview, what's the strategic goal and outcome that the IDF or that the State of Israel is seeking to bring about when it sends these aid missions overseas? Because there are people who say, why should we send aid missions to Syria? Why should we remove doctors from Israeli hospitals and send them overseas when we've got our own problems at home? I'd like you to express to those people what the strategic underpinnings are of this doctrine of extending a helping hand across the globe.
I think one of the strengths of the State of Israel is the ability of extending a helping hand. And I think it's all of us as a humanity have to deal with this strategy, that whenever you have the ability to help others, you have to do that. And this is what is happening in Israel. We believe that when we have the ability to help others, of course, it's not instead of helping ourselves. It's not like we have the ability to continue working in our hospitals, continue taking care of our borders, and besides sending a delegation, a military delegation to an affected country to help others. I think it's a huge opportunity for all of us to be at the place when there is a need, a real need for us. And I can tell you for sure that sometimes our presence in these places was the difference between death and life. And when you have the power of saving lives, I think it's a huge honor to use it.
Well, Dr. Bader, as ever, it's an honor for us to be able to host you, to be able to learn from you. We greatly appreciate your time, and we very much value the expertise that informs the insights you've imparted here today. On behalf of the Miryam Institute, I say thank you. On behalf of our listeners and our viewers, I say thank you. And I always say this, whenever I have occasion to listen to you, to interact with you, to be briefed by you, I always feel that I walk just a couple of inches taller with pride thereafter. You really are a source of tremendous pride for us as a state and as a country. And I thank you and of course wish Godspeed to all of our delegates to Turkey and to Syria. May they come home safely. And they too instill a great deal of pride within the hearts of all of us. Thank you, Dr. Bader. It's been a real honor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you a little bit of our experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We'll see you soon.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double high or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.